I'm Nicola Morgan and I'm here with Megan Morgan, my niece and research assistant, and Megan is going to be asking me some questions about smartphones, screens and social media, which I wrote about in the Teenage Guide to Life Online. Megan.
So you wrote the Teenage Guide to Life Online. Do you think teenagers need a special message?
No, I don't. And really it should be called Life Online. And it was originally going to be called just Life Online. But because I write teenage guides and my other books are called The Teenage Guide to This or That, it was decided to call it The Teenage Guide to Life Online. But really the message is the same, whatever age we are. And many adults are quite negative and quite critical about how young people use screens and smartphones and social media. And they imply that adults always use them perfectly. And that's just not true. Some adults use screens very unhealthily and some young people use screens very healthily. So there's not really an age difference. Also, many young people think that people my age can't possibly know anything about screens and social media. And that's not true either. I've been on screens and on the internet for longer than most teenagers have been alive. It has been around for that long. And so many of us are experts on it, and many of you young people are experts on it as well. So we need to get away from these age generalizations. There are good and healthy ways to use our screens, and there are bad and unhealthy ways to use our screens. And so Life Online, or the Teenage Guide to Life Online, is really a guide for everyone. And what I hope most of all actually is that parents and other adults will read it and will start to understand not just the negatives but also the positives of our screens and smartphones and social media, because there are phenomenal positives to all of these things. And sometimes people ask me if I would like to go back to a time when we didn't have these things, or if I would like to somehow engineer a world where we didn't have smartphones and social media. And I definitely wouldn't, because I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. But I do think there are some negatives, and it's only when we properly understand those negatives without being all scaremongering and all judgmental and all negative about it, when we properly understand what the risks are, then we can all, whatever age we are, live really well with these tools, these devices, and they can be our tools and not our tyrants. And I think very often for people of all ages, older people and younger people, these devices are ruling us instead of us ruling them.
What do we know and what do we not know about the effects of screens and social media?
Well, big question. So lots of people, as I say, talk about the negatives. There are lots of headlines, big negative headlines saying things like being on social media too much damages self-esteem or damages mental health. And that isn't actually something that we know. We know that it's sometimes bad for some people. We know that some people have bad experiences online, and we know that there are some things that happen that can lower your self-esteem. For example, when you're constantly comparing yourself to perfect images that you might see online, or your friends' apparently perfect lives and all of those things. That, of course, can lower individual self-esteem. But what we don't know is whether a certain amount of time spent online or on our screens is bad for us, for our mental health. And we can't really know that ever, because all of the things that people do on their screens are so different. You know, you're comparing, or you would be needing to compare the very positive things that people do online with some very negative things that people do online. So it's what you do online and your personality and your friendship and support group that is going to depend on whether you have a positive or a negative time online. So that's kind of a set of things that we don't really know very much about. We can't really say that a certain amount of social media or a certain amount of screen time or a certain amount of computer gaming, because all those three things are not the same. We can't say that a certain amount of those things is a safe amount or a good amount or a bad amount. But one of the sets of things that we do know is to do with how our screens distract us and how they spoil our concentration. Because these devices, whether it's smartphones or tablets or whatever, they are beautifully designed to distract us. There's almost everything about them is distracting. The fact that you can do so much on them. We're programmed to be curious, for example. We're programmed to want to try things and want to find things out and want to click things and want to be attracted by moving things. And all of those things are happening all the time on our devices. We have constant opportunities to be distracted and to be curious. We're also programmed to be social, and being social is really important for humans, whatever age we are. And again, our screens give us constant opportunities to do that. So the opportunity for us to overuse, because they're so tempting and so there are so many pleasures involved, and the opportunity to be distracted and for our concentration to be spoiled are huge. I mean, one of the things we know, for example, is that if we're trying to do a piece of work, whether or not we're trying to do it on a screen or on paper, let's say, if a phone or another device, a laptop or something, is open or is just there beside us, our concentration, as measured by our ability to perform on the task that we're trying to do, drops, even if the phone doesn't bring messages. So the presence of a phone, or other studies have shown the presence of someone else next to you, being on their laptop, for example, destroys or damages, hinders our own concentration on the task. And so that's important information, because many of us, both young people at school and adults in the workplace, and me in my workplace, we are exposing ourselves constantly to all of these distractions, and we are therefore reducing our ability to perform on the task in hand. And no one wants that. Everyone wants to be able to do their work better and more quickly. So if we know that, then we can take a very simple step, which is one of the things that I try to do, of making sure that we don't have a phone or another distracting device, something that is not what we're using for the piece of work, making sure we don't have that visible, making sure we have it out of the way, and we set ourselves a simple goal of, let's say, I'm going to work on this piece of work for 40 minutes or 45 minutes or half an hour or whatever it is. And then I'll go on my social media, but I will not have my social media or my smartphone anywhere within reach or within sight. So when we know that, then it empowers us to be able to work more healthily and be less stressed, because it is stressful trying to multitask. If we are trying to do a piece of work or trying to read something or write something or whatever, but we've got other things, other windows or our Facebook page or whatever it is, or our phone there, or text messages coming in, those things are making it stressful for us to try to concentrate. It's difficult, it's tiring. So why do that to ourselves? Why not just make it simpler and better by removing the thing just for a while and then come back to it afterwards? So I'm not saying don't use these devices. I'm not even saying use them less, actually. I'm saying use them in a controlled way. Use them when it's the right time to do it, when it'll make you feel and function better.
What are the main tips you have for all of us to use screens healthily?
Well, so the Teenage Guide to Life Online has loads of tips for everyone. And also it's worth pointing out that that book explains the science, and it explains the positives and the negatives of all of the aspects of our lives online. But if I'm to give 4 important tips, the first one would be to practice what I call unitasking. So that is doing one thing at a time, rather than, as I say, having our mind split between all of these windows open all the time. So when we're trying to do a piece of work, keep our phone and our other devices that we're not actually using for that work, keep them out of the way, and practice working on one task at a time. And the second one is to forget the statistics about whether mental health is improved or reduced by using social media for a certain amount of time. Forget the statistics, forget the headlines, focus on how you feel. So if you are having a bad time on social media, if something is making you annoyed or upset or undermined or whatever, then step away, walk away, switch off, walk away, practice self-care, and go and do something else. Go and see another friend, go for a walk in the park, listen to some music, just do something else, walk away. You have the power to walk away. You don't have to stay there and carry on feeling bad. Then the third tip is to get the best sleep that you can. And that is going to start with making sure all your devices are off, all devices and screens are switched off. Ideally, not even in your bedroom at all, but completely out of the way. But if they are in there, at least completely switched off and out of sight. Usually, ideally, an hour or an hour and a half before you want to feel sleepy. And part of the reason for that is the fact that all of our screens, or almost all of our screens, are backlit, which means that the light from them mimics daylight. So it tricks your brain into thinking it's daytime, so you don't feel so sleepy. But that's actually not the more important reason. The more important reason for switching them off is that typically they bring us messages, and typically the messages are not very relaxing messages. Text messages or messages and notifications on social media tend not to be calming, relaxing ones. They tend to be either annoying ones or exciting ones. So they tend to make you happy and excited, or annoyed and sad and or anxious or something like that. So the act of switching them off disconnects you from that and allows you to relax and calm down for sleep. And then the fourth thing, I think, is the most important thing, and that is, people ask, how long is an okay amount of time to spend on my screen or my smartphone, on social media or whatever? And there isn't an answer to that. My answer instead is to say, make sure you're spending enough time doing all of the other things that we know are necessary for good well-being, good mental and physical health. So make sure you have enough sleep, enough physical exercise and going outside, enough face-to-face conversation, enough either reading for pleasure or any other kind of offline or off-screen hobby, and finally enough time just for thinking, just for allowing your mind to wander and be creative and just drift and daydream, and sometimes even to be bored. And it's been shown that those times, even if it's a minute or 5 minutes here and there, are really important for learning, really important for mental health, and really important for creativity. And I think if we have spent each day enough time, we've done all of those things, then it doesn't matter if the rest of the time we spend on social media, because we've done all of those other good and positive things, and then we can do whatever we want, chill out on social media or computer gaming or whatever it is that we want to do. So it's prioritizing the really positive, healthy things that we know are going to make us feel and function better, and then the rest of the time is yours to do whatever you want with.
Have you got a final message for young people?
Yes, I do. They need to tell their parents and their teachers and any other adults that they know that they need to listen to all of the messages as well. That they need to understand properly the positives and the negatives of social media. They need to stop all of this intergenerational argument about who does it better and who knows more about it. And if they obviously read the Teenage Guide to Life online. So to young people and teenagers, buy the Teenage Guide to Life online for your parents and the adults in your life. You don't have to read it if you don't want to, but make them read it.